Good day, everyone. It's Peter Dunn, Pete the Planner, CEO of your life. I don't know. Hello. It's Pete the Planner Show. Live, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. Hello, Damian Dunn, co-host of the Pete the Planner Show.
Hello, Pete the Planner, host of the Pete the Planner Show.
Dame, how are you? Have you had a good week?
It has been a action-packed week full of ups and downs and ins and outs. It would have made a great Hallmark special.
Boy, I can feel the podcast turning off right now. Dame, we did get some feedback from Jeremiah, a longtime listener of the show, who said to me via Twitter this week, can you please quit saying you've got other places to be? It's making me anxious. There he is, Jeremiah. There, see what you actually just said it right in the Facebook Live. And I mentioned you. Jeremiah, I have only time for you today. That's it. That's all I got. That's all I got is you. Dame?
Pete, I've got stuff to do today. We're going to have to make sure this.
I just genuinely laughed at you. Someone take note. It was March 4th. I don't know. Today's Mrs. Planner's birthday, by the way. Do not wish her birthday on social media because she would not appreciate it. So there you go. Dame, on the show this week, we've got, it's all investing episode. Like we're trying to increase people's financial acumen this week. Mm-hmm. So that's what we're doing. We're talking risk tolerance versus risk capacity. We're talking about the diversification mistakes, if you will. And then we were also talking about the herd mentality, which is a lot easier to explain given that, well, it happens on a daily basis in the modern market and the sort of ancient market on top of that. So, Dame, anything else before we get started? I mean, because if not that I have anything to do, but let's just go ahead and do the show. You know what I mean?
No, let's roll right into it and get this moving.
This party started. Okay, here we go. 3, 2. This week on the Pete the Planner Show, we answer your money questions. Here's how the show works. You email us askpete@petetheplanner.com. askpete@petetheplanner.com. We'll answer your question. We appreciate you listening here on the radio. I'm Peter Dunn, Pete the Planner. Joining me as always is Damian Dunn. And the last names are the same, but the family's not. Dame, we are not related, and you are joining me on the show. Hello, Damian.
Hello, Pete.
I'd love to disclaim our lack of relation.
I think everybody does, especially my family.
Yeah, fair enough. Dame, this week on the show, we are talking investing the whole time. We don't always talk about investing on this show, but this week we are completely talking about investing. And we're talking about concepts that will make you a better investor that becomes less frustrated with your investing decisions. That's a decent way to think about it, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's so much that's wrapped up in investing if you choose to really dig into it. And we're going to talk about some of those concepts. It's going to be pretty informative.
Well, let's begin. Dame, there is something called risk tolerance. Risk tolerance, and people are generally speaking rather familiar with risk tolerance. This is something you talk about on a regular basis to the people we serve. How do you best describe risk tolerance?
Risk tolerance is that little feeling you get in your stomach that keeps you up at night or makes you feel a little lightheaded when you open statements when the markets aren't doing so hot. If you look at a downturn in the market as something that is going to hinder you from making your goals or getting to your goals versus a potential buying opportunity or somewhere on that scale in between, you're dealing with risk tolerance right there. You want to make sure that what you are invested in and your strategy of investments isn't causing you more anxiety than benefiting you in the long run.
Are there signs, or is it just like you feel anxious? I mean, because by the way, feeling anxious is a pretty good sign that you got a problem there. Is it that you're checking the market too much, or is it that when you see the market you go, oh, like how do you tell that you're invested against your risk tolerance?
Checking the markets is a great one. Calling if you work with an advisor, calling an advisor, more frequently than your structured appointments maybe. I'm not saying you shouldn't reach out to your advisor when you've got questions and things of that nature, but if you're calling specifically to ask about investments and how they're doing or why are they going down, first of all, your advisor is going to clue in on that pretty quick and realize that maybe your risk tolerance is off, but that should be a big clue to you that you need that extra reassurance that maybe your investment strategy isn't appropriate for your risk tolerance.
Do you think people are claim to be more aggressive than they really are, or do you think people claim to be more conservative than they really are? What do you think is the more common problem?
first, it goes both directions.
Totally.
Some people will say that they are way more conservative when actually they're a little bit more comfortable than that. But usually, I see most people say they're more aggressive than they actually have the tolerance to withhold.
Which then brings us to our next topic as it relates to risk, and that is risk, or capacity for risk, I should say. And Dame, that's a little different. Capacity for risk is super interesting, and it's what takes a conservative investor and sort of shakes them and says, hey man, you got to do something because your inability or your unwillingness to take risk is actually hurting you.
Yeah, risk capacity is a really interesting little critter because you may have a very high risk tolerance, but the capacity that your portfolio is able to withstand or needs to withstand at any point in time could vary differently than what your risk tolerance is. So let's say you are within a couple of years of retirement and you want to make sure that that money isn't going to fluctuate or be exposed to too much volatility because you're going to require it to live in retirement. That capacity is going down. Your tolerance may still be high. You still might be okay with some swings mentally and emotionally, but your portfolio can't stand it because you need those assets to make sure that your retirement, you're going to be able to transition to retirement smoothly. So risk tolerance, risk capacity are related, but they are not equals.
It's one of my favorite concepts. I think of it a little different. I think about what my financial goals are, and I think the minimum amount of return I need to get in order to achieve those goals. And then generally speaking, in my opinion, for my own financial life, I don't take any more risk than I have to there, right? Like it's a little different spin on it, but I find that sometimes because people don't have well-defined financial goals, that they don't know their capacity for risk, which is a giant mistake.
Yeah, if we think about generalized risk capacity for the average person, it's going to be really high when you're younger. You got your first job, not going to retire for a long time. If we're saying retirement is the goal, you have a large capacity for risk because there's plenty of time for markets to go up and down and for you to accumulate assets over that period of time. That capacity is going to diminish the closer you get to retirement. And frankly, it'll probably be as small as it will ever get, potentially, right before retirement, right before and right after retirement. You need those assets to be stable. Interestingly, though, the older you get, the possibility is there that your risk capacity goes up because you may not need as much money the older you get in retirement. So you might be able to take some additional risks if you choose to, because the demand on that cash may not be, or the expected need for longevity in that cash may not be what it once was 10, 15, 20 years prior.
This weekend in central Indiana, this past weekend, it was very nice, 60 some degrees. It felt like spring. There's always that nice day. And I played basketball with my son and his friend. They are in fourth grade in our driveway. And we lowered the goal and I was dunking on them. And I went to dunk on my son, Ted, and he nearly undercut me because he did not know that you can't undercut a large person while they're hurling towards a basketball rim. And Dame, it was after that game when I went inside and said to my wife, hey, Ted almost killed me, that my risk tolerance, I had to reevaluate it, honestly. And you think about it, the older you get, it's not just investment risk tolerance that changes. It's the risk I'm willing to take with my body to play basketball. I stopped playing in pickup games a long time ago when I tore a muscle in my leg because I was like, what's the point of this? Think about food too. You know, I used to be able to risk having a triple cheeseburger. That was a risk I was willing to accept, or a fiery hot bowl of chili. Not so much anymore. Basically what I'm saying is I've become bland and old in my bland oldness.
Do you want to confess to how low that rim was that you were dunking on?
I'm not good with numbers. No. It was actually, that's a good question. I think it was 7.5. So, I mean, it was pretty low. Yeah.
It's higher than I would have given you credit for.
What? How much? I mean, I know this is a financial show once a year, but what goal could you currently dunk on? What height?
Ooh.
The max?
Probably 8.5 would be my guess.
Me too. Yeah, me too. 8.5.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe 8.25. Those extra 3 inches is where the ball gets hung on the rim. Dame. All right. So If your advisor talks to you about risk tolerance, which is a very common thing, you take a risk tolerance questionnaire, be sure to talk about capacity for risk or risk capacity. It is a additional element that I think in many ways is more informative once you've come to terms with your risk tolerance. What do you say, Dame? I was listening to a show about basketball, and the guys were talking about risk capacity. How do you bring this up?
Ideally, it comes up naturally inside of a conversation led by the advisor. However, as you start to look at the projections towards retirement, ask, okay, how much volatility can my portfolio withstand within that maybe 5 year on either side of that date that you pick out, and make sure you've got a plan so that if you have a rough market, you don't have an adverse sequence of returns risk that you're going to run into, and your money's going to be just fine.
Beautiful. You know, our goal really is not to displace your financial advisor, because we are not financial advisors. Our goal is not to make you feel worse about your financial advisor. Our goal is to help you become a better client so your financial advisor can serve you better. Plain and simple. Coming up after the break, we'll do more about that. Sort of like, what are the risks of diversification? How can it go wrong? That's next on the Pete the Planner Show. I'm Pete the Planner. My man Brian Pinkins comes in with his last dunk was on a 10-foot goal was 6 years ago. It is worth noting that Brian Pinkins is a large man.
I was gonna say that indicates one of two things to me about Brian Pinkins. Either he is very tall or he is very young.
Mr. Pinkins, what are you, 6'6"? I think he's 6'6". Which, you know, when I talk to him face to face, I'm basically looking at his navel. It's very comfortable.
Yeah.
I was in my driveway the other day doing something, and I don't know why this other person walked by, and they were very tall, and I thought, you know what? I think I'm a small man. I think I'm a, like it just hit me. I was like, I never really aspired to be a small man, but I'm a smallish man, big compared to like big men.
I mean, you're just over average height for a U.S. male, aren't you?
I'm 5'9" and a half.
I think that's just over.
I think 5'9". I'm average in any way that you look at it.
Well, then you're average, I guess.
Dame, you know what occurred to me this week? That there's a huge disparity between how much people bowl and how much rich people purport to like bowling. If you've ever seen a mega mansion, there's always a bowling alley in the mega mansion. And it makes you think, oh, wealthy people must like to bowl. Dame, how many times a year do you bowl?
0.
Okay. Mrs. Planner and I were having this discussion last night because I was making this point to her because I like to be tedious to everyone in my life. And we were like, okay, we bowled twice this year because it was a pandemic. We had nothing else to do. Mm-hmm. So twice. If you're a wealthy person that has like a bowling alley in your house, like Tony Stewart put up his hunting preserve in Columbus, Indiana up for sale for $30 million this weekend. And it's like, he has a bowling alley. It's like, well, okay, maybe that translates a little bit, but sometimes out in like, Bel Air or something, people have a bowling alley. It's like, who's bowling that much?
Have you ever had a bowling alley in your home while you've been enjoying a couple glasses of wine? Because maybe your perspective changes.
That's a good point.
At the level of your blood alcohol content.
Is that the thing? Like, if you have a bowling alley, you like to party?
I mean, there's pictures of, was it Nixon bowling in the bowling alley at the basement of the White House? I mean, I think it was super popular at one point, but for whatever reason, it's just somewhat fallen out of vogue.
I wonder if the White House having the bowling alley is what sort of influenced other large estates to have a bowling alley. I'm sure it did.
Yeah. Can you imagine having foreign dignitaries over to the White House and it's like, hey, want to go bowl a couple rounds?
I don't know what made me think about this because we're talking about partying, but like when Ted was like 4 or 5 years old, like he came home from school one day and we're just talking, and it's like when you're a kid and you hear that party is a verb. Do you remember when you first learned that party is a verb? It's not like you're going to party, you're gonna party. He like looked me straight in the eyes. He's like, "Do you like to party?" And it was like he was offering me Coke on South Beach or something like that. And it was like still one of my favorite moments of my life. He just looked me square in the eyes like, "Do you like to party?" I was like, "No, I don't want any of your street drugs, Theodore." First Coke reference on the show in a long time.
Well,
not really my thing, but
give up Miguel and you got to transition to something.
I may have over caffeinated on Wednesday of this week. And in a high stakes situation, could have backfired. Yeah, it's uncomfortable. Anyway, Dame, I was called, I don't know why I'm doing this. I was called salesy this week on 2 separate occasions by 2 separate people in 2 different settings. And I am a lot of things, but I've never viewed me as salesy. I just happen to have a big personality. And so let me tell you, if you don't view yourself as salesy and you view that to be a negative characteristic and 2 different people in the same week call you salesy, it burns you to the core.
Yeah. I think that's just more of a common trait among salesy people. Have bigger personalities, more being able to turn up that extrovertedness and really go after it. So they just don't know you, Pete. It's okay. It's not your fault.
No, that's why I chalked it up to. It's like, I had a short period of time to make an impression to talk about what I was talking about. And so, some people can perceive that as salesy, and maybe I was. I don't know. The fact that I took it so hard when I saw that feedback a couple different times, I was like, yeah, I probably was. I mean, at some point when someone gives you feedback you disagree with, but it's consistent enough in a short period of time, you have to stop fighting it and sort of acknowledge it.
Yeah, it becomes instructive, and you can correct whatever things you think might have led to that judgment and move on.
I have. It was Miguel. That's my point. Okay, let's start the show. In 3, 2, 1. Back on the Pete the Planner show. Dame, diversification is often talked about in the financial world as something that is very good and very healthy. However, what we've learned as people who've been in the financial world for quite some time is that a lot of errors occur when it comes to diversification, even when a person is attempting to diversify. So what I want to do is, of course, take some time to explore the errors that occur when you don't diversify. But more importantly, I want to talk about the common errors that people make in their attempts to diversify. And I will kick this off with something that we see in the 401k space a number of times. There's 2 things that people do that don't make a lot of sense, even though there's good intention behind it. And the first one is to just have a little piece of every investing option within your portfolio, just to say, 5% of this, 5% of this. Just because they're different doesn't mean they're worth diversifying against. And then the second thing we see people do, and this one's actually not good at all, is if you choose to invest in what's called a target date fund, which is a fund linked to the year in which you are likely to retire. If you choose to diversify the number of target date funds, so instead of going, hey, I'm going to retire in the year 2045, I'm going to put all my money in that, which is, if you're using target date funds, what you should do. What people tend to do is they'll go, well, I'm going to put 50% in that one and 50% in 2055. And I don't know if there's any percents left, and I'm going to put them in other ones. And I was like, well, that's not how they work. And that is a diversification error.
Yeah, there are some super common mistakes. And one of we actually saw this a lot, at least in one of the offices I worked in the early 2000s. There was a very popular mutual fund company that I'm sure they knew it, but they used
American funds.
Yeah, they used this like the same 10 stocks in almost all of their big mutual funds, and so you had this thing called stock intersection, whereas you thought you were diversifying into a few different strategies using different mutual funds, but in reality, you were just overlapping a whole bunch. So you ended up having larger concentrations in a few number of stocks that were going to impact your portfolio. And you never realized it. Now, to their credit, they came up with a tool to help you root that out of your portfolios. But the fact that they had to come up with a tool to help you root that out is a little telling. So even if you do try to diversify, you may end up investing in the same stuff if you're not careful. So that gets a little bit confusing, but it is something you need to be aware of.
Yeah, and what's interesting too with modern portfolio theory is that some types of investments interact well with other types of investments and actually get that balance out. just by the nature that things are different doesn't mean they balance each other out. So sometimes what you'll see people do is it's almost like an adverse reaction to mixing prescriptions. It's like, oh, there's unintended consequences. You see that a lot with people that say, oh, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Let's choose this basket. And they've haphazardly evaluated the other basket.
Yeah, knowing what you are investing in, having a strategy. That's one of the areas that a financial advisor could really help someone out in, is making sure that you have a cogent strategy on how you're going to invest your money. And it's not just a shotgun approach.
One of the ways that I used to see when I managed people's money that they always wanted to go is they'd say, okay, we're going to be in large cap growth companies, large cap value companies. Then we're going to be in some mid caps and some small caps. And there we go. And then they'll say, oh, and then we'll throw in some international. And by the way, when you throw in international, you're generally throwing in large cap international, and you're not actually looking at the other types of international investments that would truly balance out your portfolio. Or you would say, I want to be in international, but then you would be in like Brazilian stocks when you really should be in the other BRIC nation stocks. And it used to get sort of complicated.
Yeah, one of the things that's super closely aligned with what you're talking about is a home bias. Often we just invest where we know. And the U.S. investment market, U.S. stock market is large. It's around 50% of the global stock market. But that's only 50% of the global stock market. And yes, when we have troubles, oftentimes other parts of the world have troubles as well. But if you are solely invested in U.S. companies, you're leaving a lot on the table, and you're not actually diversifying. Even though everything else in your portfolio may look diversified, you need to get some geographical diversification in your portfolio as well.
I think back to probably the year 2000, I was trained in the financial services industry to be an investment advisor. And I can see my trainer at the front of the room. It's sort of a weird story. I graduated from college, but I had to get securities license before I graduated from college. So I passed my Series 7 as a college student. Then I was going to get married at the end of July in the year 2000. Early July, they sent me to Secaucus, New Jersey to train for 2 weeks. And I looked out the window of the training room at the World Trade Center every single day for 2 weeks. And I remember my trainer saying something like, when you get home, look around your house. How many of those things are made overseas? And then you're like, name them. And people are like, Sony television? And then people are like, Mitsubishi toaster? And they're saying, and he's going, he's like, so if 80% of the things that are made overseas are in your home, shouldn't that be in your portfolio too? And I'm like, I'm 20-nothing years old. And my mind is like, man, he really tied it together. It's like, this has really come together for me. I'm going to make it back to Indiana and really help people out.
And you bought 1 million shares of Capital World Growth and Income and lived your life.
Exactly. No, I had Capital World Growth and Income and Growth Fund of America.
Of course. I mean, what else do you need?
I mean, those two together. There was what's the balanced American Balance Fund too? Yeah. ABAX, something like that. I remember I had it.
And I'm gonna forget that one.
So anyway, the point is this: just because there's a lot of ingredients in the cake doesn't mean that the ingredient belongs in the cake. And I think when you invest and you're like, oh, I'm diversified, I've got 15 things, you just need to pump the brakes and realize that you have different things, but you might not actually be diversified. And the reason you want to be diversified, by the way, goes back to your risk tolerance, which we talked about in the previous segment. This isn't just diversification for diversification's sake. It's so that you're taking the proper level of risk in order to get the reward that you're going for. And if you don't play those two things off of each other, then it doesn't make a lot of sense in relation to your goals, which is why I also think a lot of modern day trading for amateurs gets sort of weird, because there really is no financial goal. The risk tolerance is not established, and diversification is an afterthought.
Absolutely. It's a lot tougher to have that cogent plan that we talked about if you don't have that long-term goal. Day traders have a goal. It's a very short-term goal. It's to make sure that they're trying to make money on a daily basis. And that is a lot harder than most people give it credit for. And that's why day traders in general don't make money except in raging bull markets. You catch some times like this, or like we had a couple of years ago, all of a sudden you find out who's actually in it for the long term and who's just there to make easy cash. Can we move on to a different area real quick before we break?
Feel free. You've got a minute. You dazzle us.
So I think one of the other areas that we often overlook is excluding anything other than conventional investments. And so that's it could be precious metals, and please don't hit me up because of the times that we're in, but gold and maybe rentals and farmland if you're in that part of the country, and artwork or whatever it is. There are lots of opportunities for people to try and get invested in these other areas now more than ever, and they are vastly different than what we would see in the stock market and the ups and downs there. So if you have the ability and the capacity to get into some of those other areas, I'm not saying you go all in, but maybe have some other things to balance out your overall investment portfolio. Investments just don't have to be stocks, bonds, CDs, things of that nature. They can come in the form of other things.
More things that you can talk to your financial advisor about. Look, there are people can do it yourself, and you can have a diverse sort of all-in-one fund. A target date fund offers a lot of diversity a lot of times. But if you can't do that, or if you don't have the capacity to do that, talk to a financial advisor. Help them help you diversify the right way. Coming up after break, our favorite quality, the herd mentality. I'm Pete the Planner. I don't exactly know why that's our favorite quality. The herd mentality. I was sending a text, a Slack, doing the time, and then trying to close the segment. So needless to say, I just said words.
It worked.
Go figure. Look at it. I feel like we're teaching things about money today. Like, it's weird when the show is valuable to others.
It'll never last.
I know. Do you think we can keep up for 3 segments?
Well, we're going to find out. Herd mentality is going to be interesting.
Because it can peter out pretty quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a pretty simple concept. Did you ever watch? Oh, you don't have access to the HBO Max. I was going to ask if you watched that Carl Icahn documentary. Did anyone in the Facebook Live or anybody watch the Carl Icahn documentary on HBO Max that I recommended last week? Because it's phenomenal. It's phenomenal.
I'll have to take your word for it.
You know what I might do is later this weekend, I'll like FaceTime with you while it's on, and just like, I think that's illegal though, isn't it? When I'm rebroadcasting it.
Didn't Apple release that thing where you can share what you're watching on your phone?
I don't know. Dame, I'm also to the point where I use and understand about 30% of the capabilities of my iPhone.
Did you just have that same realization that I did? This is exactly what it was. Like within the last couple of weeks, I looked at my phone and I was like, I don't even know how to use most of what's on here.
Well, it hit me the other day. So there's on the iPhone, you hit the up from the top right corner and pull down, and there's all these buttons. I'm like, I don't know what that one does. Like this one here, I'm just hit it. What's it do? NFC tag reader. I think I just started I don't know what happened, but that doesn't seem good.
I think you can clear a lot of those buttons off to make you feel better about yourself.
When did I become my father?
I don't.
And I like my dad. There's nothing wrong with it, but I found myself. I think I told this last week. I was sort of dancing, and I saw myself in the rearview mirror. And I was like, "Oh my god, I'm dancing like Michael Douglas."
Oh well, I mean, if you can only look like Michael Douglas.
Yeah, I mean, he's a handsome older man.
Yeah.
Okay, enough about Michael Douglas. Let's continue the show. In 3, 2, 1. Back on the Pete the Planner show. Dame, has it ever occurred to you that when peer pressure takes hold in the financial world, there's a term for it that leads people to make mistakes they don't intend to make, but they get so carried away with what's going on, and the name for it is...
Are you going to tell us?
No, I was going to hope... I was hoping you'd fill in the blank. This is like a Mad Libs.
Sorry. Herd mentality.
Herd mentality. It's been going on as long as people have been exchanging goods and buying and selling them in the capacity. You think about moments like Tulip Mania. You think about things like all sorts of things where the herd is going one way, and are you going to get dragged alongside of them? So what do you think, Dane? Help us understand the herd mentality in the most basic level.
I think kids these days would refer to part of this as FOMO. Making sure that they are being involved in whatever culturally relevant thing they deem appropriate at the time is. investing, it's hard not to chase trends when you're trying to make money or build assets for a certain goal. We saw it with the tech bubble a number of years ago. We saw it with just about everything over the last 18 months. But it is very difficult for us behaviorally to not see something that has done very well, whether it's over a past month or past quarter or past 12 months, and not want to be a part of it. And at that point, as you're getting in late, you are often getting in too late. You're not going to receive all of the benefits of just having a nice measured investment strategy where you've owned it the whole time, whether it was in good times or bad times. You're going to ride that entire wave. So herd mentality can, of course, you'll benefit a little bit in good times. In bad times, that's where it gets really, really tricky. Because if you decide you're going to sell out because your friend in the next cubicle said, "I can't take it anymore, I'm selling out. I think this thing's going to the floor." Getting out is one thing, getting back in is another, and that's the really tough part of that decision. But you will have the potential to create long-term problems for yourself with those long-term goals if you start to succumb to herd mentality.
I want to paint a picture for you. Sitting around the break room with your colleagues. Let's say, for instance, Dame, that you're 27 years old. And for some reason, people say, well, that Dame, he's an old soul. So the coworkers you're hanging out with, they're eating their egg salad sandwiches, are all 59 years old. And you're 27, like I mentioned.
Sure.
And your coworkers start to talk about how the company stock that they have is no longer a good idea. And one of them said, my broker told me to sell it. And then the other guy says, well, I have the same broker and he told me to sell it too. And by the time he gets around the table, 4 of the 5 people there are selling the company stock. And so you, Dame, the 27-year-old sitting there, you had hair in this example.
No.
Yeah, it looked good though.
Well, of course.
Dreads were a strange choice, but I do like your hair in this scenario. And you think, oh, well, I should totally sell. These guys know what they're talking about. They are my friends. They are smart. They have a broker. I should sell. And I have just described A, herd mentality, and B, I've described why investment objectives matter so much. Those 4 dudes sitting at your table, combined age, a lot, 236. There's some math on the fly on a Friday.
Wow.
236 years old. They have a different investment objective for you. So just because someone sells an investment that doesn't make sense for them doesn't mean you should sell it because you have your own reason for having it.
Yeah, and it's very difficult to give 27-year-old me the benefit of the doubt. It's very difficult to hear people that you are friends with, that you most likely respect for the most part, say, you know what, this isn't good, I'm getting the heck out, and not to think, well, gosh, if they're doing it, I should do it too. So it's very important. There's a thing called an investment policy statement, and it might be overkill for some people, maybe for a lot of people, but the crux of it is this. It lays out how you are going to approach investing. It's going to give you a target to shoot for on an annual basis. It's going to give you bumpers to try and stay within. And if your overall strategy does fall within that range, then you just keep your head down and keep contributing money to it and let it do its thing. You'll review that every once in a while, of course, but what somebody else does should have very little bearing on what you are doing if you believe in what you've set up and how you're approaching it.
I know everyone's expecting us to talk about cryptocurrency right now, but I'm going to skip that and instead talk about NFTs. I mean, I feel like there's a massive herd mentality right now when it comes to NFTs. In fact, I read last week, I believe, I may have even talked about on the show, De'Aaron Fox. I don't know how to say his name. He's the point guard for the Sacramento Kings in the NBA. He released some NFTs and sort of went awry and went silent and is being accused of fraud. And I think even at that level of celebrity or notability where a person can, capitalize, monetize on their fame via NFTs, if they were to understand them, that is a herd mentality where people are saying, hey, that is a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, this could have easily fallen into part of the diversification strategy as well, but NFTs may turn out to be something that actually has value in the long run. I don't know. I'm not saying that you shouldn't look at them, but certainly don't put a bulk of your assets and your investable assets and wealth into things that are yet unproven. I'm not saying that that investment that you've got with your broker is going to turn out just fine, but it's probably got a little bit more of a track record than what an NFT released by an NBA player is going to have.
It's hard not to think back to when you're growing up and your parents would say things to you when you'd get in trouble in middle school and your friends do something, then you join in and get in trouble and they say, well, if friends jumped off a bridge, would you? And then you think about it for a second and you want to be like, well, I mean, probably. But you can't say that because you get in more trouble. As at least I did when my parents would say that, and I would say that back. This is the adult version of peer pressure. And the strange thing is, these days, that's when you sound like an old guy when you say that. People are marketing into the herd mentality. Every crypto commercial you see where fortune favors the brave, every gambling commercial you see, they're trying to get you to be part of this moving herd and make you feel like if you're not doing it, you are missing out. That is marketing and advertising 101. But when it comes to financial instruments and the ability to take risk to get reward, it gets pretty nasty.
Yeah, you are the average investor, the average person is being manipulated more today than they ever have. And that's exactly what those commercials are trying to do. Now, you may still see an advertisement for Franklin Templeton online, although I don't know. They used to run commercials during golf tournaments and Mass Mutual and some of those other companies that are sponsoring large events. You may see commercials for things like that. I don't know if it rises to the same level of coercion or manipulation that some of these other things are. And if there's a mad rush to an area, you need to step back and ask why and make sure you understand why it might be right for you, why it might be wrong for you. Try and figure out why other people are doing it and if it really has any staying power or fits in with what you're trying to accomplish. Because if it doesn't, tune it out, ignore it, move on, keep your head down, doing everything that you normally do.
Which brings me back to Carl Icahn. I mentioned last week there's a documentary on HBO Max about Carl Icahn, iconic investor, if you will. And something he said during the documentary was, what I've learned is if everyone is flowing one way, I want to be heading in the other direction. And that is how you acknowledge the herd mentality and sometimes take advantage of it. I don't know. I find this to be interesting that if you are made to feel like an outsider because you aren't participating in something that involves risk, I think that's a pretty good indication that you're fine and your instinct to stay out of it is valid. And you shouldn't feel like FOMO is reason enough to get off the porch.
Yeah, there's a whole theory on investing that's contrarian investing, which is where Carl was kind of heading with that. So don't feel like you have to do everything everybody else is doing because you can make money other ways.
Coming up after the break, speaking of biggest waste of money, it's this week's biggest waste of money of the week. And of course, Dame's going to weigh in with current events that'll blow your mind and tickle your soul. That's all next on the Pete the Planner Show. I'm Pete the Planner. When I said tickle your soul, my brain was searching. It found a word, and then I dismissed that word and said soul.
I was hoping you weren't expecting me to give a Pillsbury Doughboy laugh.
You know, when you and I have talked about this a lot. Actually, we talk about it at work all the time. I am an out loud thinker, and there is some downside to that, a lot of downside. And one of them is you find yourself creating the word salad as it's flowing out of the mouth, and sometimes you have some unfortunate phrases.
Yeah, you understand the struggle I have with radio every week.
Oh, come on. We are. I think we're here. This is the 2-year anniversary of our COVID impact predictions.
Oh,
I should totally go back and find those.
That's what you said last week.
But I'm not going to.
No.
2-year anniversary of you and I going, Dave, this coronavirus, should we serve it with a lime? I mean, like, we were not flip about what was happening. I don't know. Interesting, right? 2 years.
Yeah, man, how time flies when you're having fun.
Okay. Sorry to do that to everybody. You ready to go here? Let's do this. Okay.
Are you ready to go?
I'm ready.
Okay.
Those are famous last words. 3, 2, 1. This week's biggest waste of money of the week, right here on the Pete the Planner Show, is the vintage Stork Club Ashtray. Opened in 1929 and closed in 1965, the Stork Club was one of New York City's most prestigious clubs, visited by celebrities, royalty, and a general mishmash of the world's elite. You know, Dame, like you.
Of course.
This ashtray, believed to be from the 1950s, is a rare piece, most likely stolen from the club in its heyday. Sculpted in black ceramic, it has tapered sides with 4 indentions for holding cigars or cigarettes, as well as raised white lettering on the outside, equally as useful as a catch-all for small items. It's an instant conversation starter. Dame, the vintage Stork Club ashtray. I mean, it's a classic-looking ashtray. I feel like Don Draper is, knocking the butt off of a Pall Mall onto this thing. What do you think this ashtray cost? It wasn't an auction. It was you could buy it. What do you think it is?
I have questions.
Okay, questions. Yes.
Will those divots hold my vape pen? Because if they won't, I don't have any use for it.
Dame, of course, is not one that uses the electronic cigarettes or byproducts of tobacco. So that was a joke.
So this is stolen material, they say. So
that's the thing. It's that's fencing, is it not?
Yeah. I mean, how is this legal? You can sell. I don't understand this. But for argument's sake and for entertainment's sake, I will say that is
used ashtray.
That's true. Used ashtray. $225.
$595, and that's why it's this week's biggest waste of money of the week. Dame, in college, on my 21st birthday, my friend Seamus and I went to Hooters in Clarksville, Indiana.
All right.
To have some chicken wings. And upon leaving the restaurant and getting halfway down the highway on the way back to Hanover, Seamus hands me a Hooters pint glass and says, "Happy birthday." And at that time, and still to this day, I am not one to steal things. I have had guilt for 22 years or 23 years over Seamus lifting a Hooters pint glass. And Dame, every night at dinner, when I drink water, I drink it out of my Hooters pint glass to this day. And that is a true story.
How guilty are you if you still use it on a daily basis?
I feel bad about it.
You could get in your car and drive to the nearest Hooters and say, I need to make something right.
I think the good part for me, and I think this is why I continue to, that's true. I probably should do that. I mean, I'm the one that turned myself in for the accidental shoplifting last week.
Here's the thing. They know you're in possession of stolen property right now.
Hooters?
Yeah, as soon as you hit publish on that, it's out on the interwebs right now. Hooters knows that Seamus stole something and you willfully received it. They're going to be looking for you.
I like that my kids have no idea what's going on with that glass. Like they don't get it because it's like, how would they know? I mean, it's not a thing. It's not really a cultural thing like it used to be.
No. I mean, I started to say you could go to a Hooters and return it, and I was like, do they have Hooters anymore? I don't even know.
Sure, Dave. What's in the news?
Pete, have you heard about surge pricing for new movies?
No.
Ticket buyers at one AMC Entertainment location in Chicago, for instance, can expect to pay an extra $1 more to see the new Batman film this Saturday night than those heading to see the 2-week-old Uncharted. And Saturday night screening of the film at a Cinemark location in Piqua, Ohio is currently priced $2 higher than one of Dog, according to the chain's website. Though variable pricing has been implemented by the nation's 3 largest chains, it's unclear how prevalent the new practice will be among smaller chains.
I remember when airlines started doing surge pricing and you were so mad, you just walk around mad. I don't know if this practice at movie theaters raises my temperature at all for several reasons. And part of this, Dame, is clearly the increments are so small, they hope people dismiss the ridiculousness of them.
Of course. I'm just wondering what the surge pricing for the new Top Gun movie is going to be when it finally comes out.
All right, so here we go. I'm going to be honest with you right now. It's a question that I'm asking, so I don't know why a question is honest. How much would you pay right now to go watch the Top Gun 2 movie in the theater? What's the cap that you would pay for one ticket? And it's not like a Flicks where there's dinner and beers. It's just like you're sitting down, you're watching Tom Cruise be handsome with his tooth in the middle of his face. You know about that, right?
No.
He has a tooth that's right in the middle of his mouth that it comes right down. It's like in the front. So if you think about your lip and you split it right down the middle, he has a tooth that sits right in the middle where you and I have teeth on either side of the middle split. He has one dead center. You didn't know that, but he's still handsome.
How does he pull that off?
Look it up. You're like, whoa.
Huh.
Anyway, how much would you pay?
Questions on this too.
Okay.
Is this movie still yet unreleased on like the only person that's going to have seen it?
No, it's opening weekend. How much are you willing to pay? By what? How much does a movie cost?
Yeah, that's what I was like. I'm gonna because like movies in my neck of the woods are less than what they are down in your area. I'd probably pay $20.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. I don't even know I don't know the last time I've been to a movie. 2019, I got to think.
I will tell you that it's one that I want to see in the theater and not wait till it comes out, though, because I think the experience on a big screen with the sound will be tremendously different in that setting versus at home.
What else is in the news?
Well, we were talking about NFTs, so I'm going to feed that animal. The Ukraine is planning to release its own collection of non-fungible tokens to support its troops defending against invading Russian forces, making it one of the first countries to release NFTs. Ukraine's Vice Prime Minister Mikhailo Fedorov announced the plan on Twitter, writing, quote, "Every day there are more and more people willing to help Ukraine to fight back. We will announce NFTs to support Ukrainian armed forces soon." End quote. It's the latest initiative in Ukraine's crypto-friendly fundraising campaign, which has raised $50 million worth of crypto in the last week. And also a $200,000 CryptoPunk wearing a blue bandana was sent to Ukraine's wallet on Tuesday. An additional $270 million has been raised in war bonds and some other stuff out there. But NFTs by Ukraine.
I have questions, and again, we have this conversation with respect, given the sensitivity of the situation. But I do have some sincere questions. Number one, like it's just chaos in Ukraine. How in the world do they have the ability to organize an NFT offering? And the follow-up question to that, sir, is why do people feel like they need to get something to support the effort? Like just give them money if that's what you want.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I think if you feel so led, then you should just hand the cash over, and whatever method you can get it to them. But to expect something in return feels a little weird.
I would feel incredibly guilty to buy a Ukrainian NFT as opposed to just somehow giving them money. Like, why do I have to get a memento of a horrible situation?
It's going to be the new war medal for people who didn't go fight. They're going to be able to display, say, I got the Ukrainian NFT.
All right, let's end on a better story.
The guy who invented Wordle sold it to the New York Times for an amount in the low seven figures, but he's probably kicking himself for not asking for more. In the first 24 hours that the company integrated Wordle into its website, visits to the page were about equal to the total monthly audience for the entire New York Times site.
I play every morning. This morning I played at 4:30, and that's about when I play. Another sign that I'm getting old.
Crossword. This is crosswords for you, Pete.
Has anyone else noticed that in the last couple months I'm just telling on myself of like I am morphing into an old man. I play every day, and it is the great joy of my life.
This is becoming Pete's confessional time.
Do you play Wordle?
I do.
Every day?
I try to. There's a couple days that slip through, but most days.
I know people like to brag on their Wordle, so I will do mine. I have missed it once, and I have played for a very, very long time. Missed once.
Wow.
You?
Look at you. I think I too have missed once, actually.
Look at you. All right, Dame. That's it. That's the show. Pretty judicious with time this week. So, Dame, we will be back next week, I believe. No one ever really knows. We'll figure that out then. So to everyone else, sending you good vibes, because good vibes are all that's in the budget. I'm Pete the Planer. That's Damian Dunn, and this is the Pete the Planer Show. All right. That's it, man. We did it.
Look at that.
All All right, Dane. Well, I hope you have a good little Friday.
Same to you.
I'm going to go shopping for Mrs. Planner this afternoon because I did not have time this week. So I did not make time this week. I'm doing that after work. And then I'm going to take her home, a new puppy or something. I don't really know.
Danza asks a great question to close it out. What's your opening Wordle guess?
My opening Wordle guess is about, and my second word is hires. Hires.
I go with arise and cloud.
Mrs. Planner goes with soar with an E, SOARE, and until. And then our third throw off word, if you have to, we both use gimpy. Gimpy.
Oh, okay.
I don't know what's wrong with us. Okay, Dame, got to go. Jeremiah, sorry, I really do. Dame, good to see you. Everyone else, stay getting money.